Well, this is live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and this is a special broadcast with Padma Shri Professor Raghavendra Tanwar, chairman of the ICHR and author and editor of a recently released book, Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh Through the Ages, a visual narrative of continuities and linkages. Well, we would like to tell our viewers that the book was recently released by Union Home Minister of India, Amit Shah. This book has shattered all myths about Kashmir prevalent in the country and has presented history of Kashmir with absolute truth and absolute evidence. There are many firsts, in fact, attached to the book, about which we will be talking to the author himself. So let me have the pleasure and the honor of introducing the mind, the brains behind this comprehensive and beautiful collection of scholarly works on Kashmir, someone who has put this out of the box work together. Professor Raghavendra Tanwar, welcome to DD India, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm very happy to join you, Sakal. Thank you for inviting me.
Always welcome, sir. And before we start with this conversation, we would also like to tell our viewers that Prime Minister Modi, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, has mentioned one of his books, India, the Mother of Democracy, in one of the editions or the episodes of Mann Ki Baat in 2023. Professor Tanwar, thank you again. Before we start talking about the book and what makes it a very powerful narration of continuities and the linkages, as the title itself suggests, let's listen to Union Minister Amit Shah on the book itself, the significance of the contents of the book, basically the excerpts from the book launch event last week.
लगभग 8000 साल के पुराने ग्रंथों में से तंवर साहब ने ढूंढ कर कश्मीर का जिक्र निकालकर यहां प्रस्तापित किया है। और जब एक ग्रंथ कश्मीर और झेलम की बात करते हैं, तब कोई नहीं कह सकता कि कश्मीर किसका है। कश्मीर भारत का अविभाज्य अंग पहले भी था, आज भी है और हमेशा के लिए रहने वाला।
So let's get talking about this book with the author himself. To begin with, a brief on what makes this book out of the box, or perhaps cut about the rest as far as the contemporary works on Kashmir, political and otherwise, that are concerned, is concerned.
Yes, Sakal, you see, basically, as the Honorable Home Minister, in the remarks that you just telecast, see, this is a civilizational history. It emphasizes, we've not created any new narrative here. It has been there all along. And what we have done is bringing it center stage. For some reason, the spiritual and cultural narrative of Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh has been oversighted, perhaps ignored, or even at most understated. So what we've done is we are telling a story that goes back thousands of years, a story that has been there all along, and which we are just bringing center stage. I'd like to read a few lines to you from the books to give you an idea, to give the audience, the listeners, a small idea of what this is all about. In 1905, the Imperial Gazetteer, Lawrence wrote the Imperial Gazetteer, and he writes a few lines here. The Valley of Kashmir is holy land, and everywhere one finds remains of ancient temples and buildings. These ancient buildings have been around for ages. This is this kind of the sentiment that has been prevailing in Kashmir here.
Right.
So what? Right. Okay.
The civilizational evolution or the historicity of Kashmir that you have brought out in the book, it's one of its unique features. But the other aspect, or the other unique aspect of this book, is also the focus on the visual narrative. So on almost every page, you will see visuals, pictures, images of artifacts and old civilizational structures and all of that. So if you could just share some insights and
Yes.
the way you've gone back to how story of Kashmir's connection with India's mainland dates back to Mahabharata era. If I'm not wrong, sir,
Yes,
it is for the first time that through this book, the cultural and the spiritual aspects of Kashmir have been highlighted.
See, this is exactly something you said it very rightly.
Right.
See, we referred to a map that goes back to the Mahabharata times, but let me give you another example. Every traveler, every chronicler who has visited India, let me start with megacities, He refers to this Bharatiya context from the Himalayas to the Great Ocean. Almost 1900 years later, Abul Fazl talks of the same thing. Aurobindo talks of it in the beginning of the 20th century. So you have a running narrative, a kind of a storyline that has been there all along. And the storyline is revolving around our civilization and our culture, as you said. The book as per se is designed, normally for, it's a historical book, purely academic, purely very well researched, contributed by some of the leading scholars in the field. And it has been, the audience that we have in mind for this book is not just the subject specialist, you can just pick it up any page, and I think anyone will be comfortable, be slightly conversant with it, and you can understand it's very simple language. We are trying to tell a narrative which will make, cutting across lines, for the common reader. It's very simple reading, beautifully researched, beautifully portrayed and published by the National Book Trust.
So the narrative at the same time is busted clearly. Beyond a doubt that Kashmir is not just a political story. The recent being that in 1947, in fact, in one of your segments, by the way, I just reached that part where you talk about how Indian army was not, the narrative then, that the Indian army was not popular in Kashmir, the myth of Bachao Fauj, the way you've totally demolished that.
Sakal, one of the great ironies of the history of Jammu Kashmir is a false narrative. And we've allowed this to prevail for a long time. And this book is an answer. The Honorable Home Minister, in his address, he spoke for a good 40 minutes at the book release.
Yes.
And this is precisely what he is saying. We are trying to tell the world the truth story. We are not creating a story here. You refer to the 1947 invasion. The narrative that has been prevailing, you pick up any Western scholar and they talk of how the Indian army, mishandled the thing, how they were not welcome in Kashmir. This is completely ridiculous. We just go to the contemporary sources. In fact, we have, I've used the word Bachao Fauj. The common Kashmiri, when I say the Kashmiri, I'm not talking of the Muslim Kashmiri or the Hindu Kashmiri or the Sikh Kashmiri. We are talking of Kashmiris.
Yeah.
One of the great events of 1947, which again has been overcited, which does not figure in mainstream narratives, is that the whole of Kashmir stood up to the invasion of Pakistan. The Pakistan side gave a jihadi call. The majority community, the Mohammedans of Kashmir, the Sikhs and the Hindus, they rejected the call. And this is one of the major things that this book is bringing out. I've been working on this for a long time. Absolutely. But please remember that the Bachao Fauj was it's not a context, it's not a contemporary context in the sense that I have termed it. It is something that appears in the media of the 47-48 period.
So having said that, the question which comes to my mind is that why did Kashmir then suddenly become so significant or important? Then I mean the early 1940s.
Yes, Sakal, this is very important. You raised a very important issue here. This is this narrative needs to be understood. See, Kashmir was not only the largest princely state in 1947. It is, it has been known as the crown of Bharat, the head of Bharat Mata. If you pick up the Constituent Assembly debates, I can recollect a member from Kerala, and Ms. Karen, she refers to Kashmir as the crown of Bharat. Now, the geographical location of Kashmir needs to be understood, and you need to place it in perspective. 1945, the Second World War ends, you have an age of Cold War, and I've seen reports in the National Geographic, in the Times London, in the New York Times, which are referring to Kashmir as a possible place where you can launch invasion or counter actions against the Soviet Union of that time. So the Western world is suddenly getting interested in Kashmir. And when quite ridiculously, we go to the United Nations, and that's exactly what happens there. So the Western world's context and the interest in Kashmir is greatly because of its important geographical location. It is touching 3 international boundaries. Please remember that.
Right, sir. So, most importantly, would you agree if I say that there has been a sense of dearth of awareness about how Kashmir is connected with its roots with the rest of India? The Kashmir narrative has been falsified completely, demolished completely.
This is not only with Kashmir, it is a major issue in contemporary Indian history writing, of the post-47 period of history writing. We have false narratives on the partition of India. We have false narratives on Kashmir. These narratives were very carefully crafted. The British, one of the biggest damages that the British did in India was they disconnected our country from its spiritual and cultural roots.
Right.
To develop a complex, kind of inferiority complex, and they gave it a completely political structure. Sadly, most of the narrative that followed the mainstream narrative today or until say 10, 15 years ago, was that Kashmir, it was a political story.
Wait.
And most people look at Kashmir as if it's something that has emerged in 1947, or maybe another 20, 30 years before that. They forget that we've had the roots, much of what we are, much of India, I call it the cradle of Indian civilization. Whether it's our language, our scripts, our cultural and spiritual legacies, our practices, our temple architecture, you name it. Our finest of musicians, our finest of artists, grammarians, everything goes back to Kashmir. This is our legacy. This is a cradle of Indian civilization.
Yes. Professor Raghavendra, I am just looking at the introduction. I mean, I think it's extremely comprehensive, runs into more than 10 pages. Well, that's not how normally the introductions of the book are, but I think the most beautiful part of this introduction is it is very seamlessly taking any reader or anyone for that matter who is not really aware with the Kashmir, the background, the history, Article 370, etc. I mean, you've elucidated that so beautifully, from historical overview to Article 370, and before that, the 1947 war, and after the worldwide attention in Kashmir and United Nations then. The amount of research, of course, the Bachao Fauj, that's where I got it from. The amount of research that has gone into this documentation.
See, Sakal, the idea was to tell a comprehensive story in a limited number of pages. If you've seen, the book is just 210 pages. And the period we are covering is right from the Vedic post-Vedic period and right down to Article 370. Article 370, of course, is a turning point. I call it a sequel of history. It's a natural unfolding of history. It was the call of history to abrogate this article. But as you said, the article, if you read the introduction, I've been very fair in the introduction. We've run through, it's very difficult to pick out on a subject like Kashmir and over 3,000 years and write it in 50 pages. But what we've done here is picking up what is most representative of an age, what is classical, what is complete truth, well researched, and tell the story in very simple language so that even someone who's not conversant would, understand the whole issue.
Right. The Kashmir has been included in the Vedic text also. You talk about that as well, and all of this, the way it links the roots of Kashmir with India, we spoke about it. The history which has been ignored and has been missing in history for a very long time. Do you think we need to do more than this, sir?
See what the idea really is, again, we are not force building a narrative here. We are only telling the truth. Let me come back, let me go slightly out of context here.
Okay.
We are a unique civilization. And you must understand this, that India is not a press button civilization. We are not an off-the-shelf nation, We have not emerged from, say, drawing of maps or the result of wars or political negotiations. We have evolved, everyone. Look at read Aurobindo, Foundations of Indian Culture, what he says. He says this civilization has evolved over thousands of years. And when they say this civilization, Kashmir is an integral part of this civilization. So you have to see the larger picture. So when once you understand this, that how India differs from other ancient civilizations, then you will place things in perspective. And Kashmir is at the root of it. I mean, you cannot visualize India, the Bharat, without Kashmir. It is like the foundations of Indian civilization.
Right. So, we would be very keen to know about the humongous research that has gone into the book. You spoke about the introduction, but documentation of the scripts, the knowledge, then the systems, the spirituality, the culture, the languages, emphasizing the meticulous effort that went into presenting the rich heritage of India, you and your team.
You see, Sakal, this has been, I did a book on Kashmir about 10 years ago. I've been working on Kashmir for the last 15 years. But when this challenge came up, it was a challenge in the sense it's spread over a huge period. So we've got archaeologists, we've got anthropologists, we've got people who've mastered good command over ancient languages, and then of course we've got contemporary historians like myself. So it has been a team effort. So we know a lot of people on ancient texts who have mastery of ancient texts, people who work on Buddhists. If you look, there are 5 or 6 people who have contributed major parts. Most of the photographs are contributed by individual scholars who have been working in the field for a long, long time. It's a hugely important project in this sense that the Paris scholars have contributed.
Absolutely. Sir, somewhere you've also maintained that the history has been changed, quote unquote. So there is this perception and understanding of the history for the masses. The historical narrative has erased the true history. So through this book, you're making an attempt, if I may be allowed to say, to fill those gaps of the untold stories, or reclaiming our narrative, or reclaiming our own roots. But that's not going to take place.
See, Sakal, what has happened in the case of Kashmir is, for over 78 years, you've had a narrative being developed. So this is just the beginning. And it's very difficult to, plant, sort of alter a false imagination that has existed for such a long time. I mean, today, if you raise the Kashmir issue, most people would say, oh, 47, this happened. They talk of majority, a Mohammedan population, they talk of minority. See, Kashmir was never a Hindu-Muslim issue. I want to make this very clear.
Right.
Anyone who has understood Kashmir deeply, I've done so much of reading, I've read so many primary sources in Kashmir, and you'll be shocked to see the bonding that has existed between the Kashmiri Pandits and the Mohammedan population there over the centuries. Suddenly when you erupt and things get complicated, basically I must tell you here, Sakal, is that Kashmir, the issue itself is rooted in the two-nation theory, which again was a huge blunder. They assumed that, the Muslims were a separate nation, and accepting that and causing partition, that actually overflowed to Kashmir. I mean, this would be another issue completely here, but let me put it in total perspective.
Right. So you've also dealt with the connection of Kashmir with Buddhism and Shaivism, of course, and the cultural and religious roots to all parts of the India, even down south. So there is this shift, in a way we would now understand the history of the region. I mean, Kashmir and South, I am not aware what all or how much has been, written about it.
See, we've got a map here contributed by one of our scholars from JNU, Professor Shah. He has shown the migration, the out migration from Kashmir. It is all over the country. You refer to Buddhism. Professor Mani and his team, Professor Lalit Gupta, they've worked on Buddhism for ages. Professor Mani is one of the leading archaeologists on Buddhism. And so the manner in which we have shown the development of Buddhism, its evolution, the Fourth Council, the stupas that have been there for centuries, the idea is to give a very composite and comprehensive picture here. Whether it is Shaivism, whether it is Sufism in the mid-centuries, medieval ages, or whether it is Buddhism, in all these religions, all these faiths, spiritual approaches are covered very well in this.
Yes, coming back to the contemporary issues surrounding Kashmir, you've mentioned that Article 370 is a created concept. And in fact, in the introduction itself, there are columns on Article 370 of the Constitution of India widely opposed, Sardar Patel and Article 370, and then of course with very interesting pictures. And Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee led the opposition to Article 370.
See, one of the biggest ironies of contemporary Indian history is this article. I get pained sometimes when I see people opposing its abrogation. I have studied it minutely. I would challenge any historian, any person to tell me one single common discourse that has demanded the imposition of specific separate provisions that emerged into the article itself in 1947 or 48. If you go through the Constituent Assembly debates, you'll be amazed by the kind of opposition there is. It is cutting across party lines. And the whole article, it was never a mass appeal, it was never a common discourse, it was never demanded for the Sheikh Sahib would claim, that he is representing mass opinion, but that completely the contemporary press does not refer to this. Go through the Constituent Assembly debates, and it is amazing the kind of what people have said in the debates.
Yes.
I quoted some examples here. And even the contemporary satirists, if you look at the manner in which Kashmir is portrayed by, Shankar, for example, I've given some cartoons of Shankar in this book.
Yes, I was coming to that, the caricature.
Shankar is an institution.
Yeah.
And the best way in a single cartoon, it tells you a whole story here.
Yeah.
So please be assured that Article 370 went against public sentiment. It was never a public demand. It was, I've used the word of friendly understanding between a handful of people.
Yes.
It's a long story of how it was passed in the assembly, how Patel was asked to pilot it, Jawaharlal ji was away in the US. That's a different story, of course. But the sentiment of the nation, the sentiment of parliament, the sentiment of the people of Kashmir was never in favor of a special provision.
It's baffling to note then, sir, that how over the generations and centuries subsequently, these untold stories were so conveniently manipulated by the political dispensations, especially, the regional ruling dispensations of the state of Jammu Kashmir, or now the Union Territory. Professor Tanwar, you're also acclaimed for important research on history of Jammu Kashmir in the critical phases of 1947 to 1953. In fact, your book, Be Clear, Kashmir Will Vote for India, Jammu and Kashmir, reporting the contemporary understanding of the unreported, that also created many ripples, where you have actually questioned the existing common historical narratives explaining the public opinion in Kashmir.
Yes, you see, in that book, I've been working on that. I worked on that book for almost 15 years. When it was published in 2019, it has an Indian edition as a British edition. Now, in that book, I've made it very clear that the common element of Kashmir, the common masses, the Jan masses of Kashmir were not in favor of anything special. It is clear Pakistan does not exist on the horizon in 47. It's clear. It is, Khwaja Ahmed Abbas, a reputed writer, journalist of his time. He was commissioned by a magazine called Current at that time, very popular magazine those days, and he spent three months traveling through the valley and all parts of Kashmir. He wrote an article. The title of my book, Be Clear, Kashmir Will Vote for India, is in fact picked up from Khwaja Ahmed's article.
Okay.
And there are on the list of people who have written on this. So there's no doubt about it.
Okay. So the book also, very quickly, I'm really running short of time. The book also features sculptures from Dras, Ladakh, discussions, images of stupas we're showing all that to viewers, depictions of temple ruins, etc. You want to share some references in that?
Please understand that Kashmir is like a window to the world. I've always felt, whenever I see the book, I've been working on it for such a long time now, it's like a window to the world. So much of Kashmir has gone out from, so much of India has gone out from Kashmir. It's like a highway to the world, cultural, spiritual highway. And it is like the pilgrimage center. Imagine the Shankaracharya walking from Kerala, barefoot and sort of walking right up to Kashmir. Just imagine, take your mind back to, say, 8th, 9th century, and then you understand the significance of Kashmir in our history.
Mm-hmm. So, finally, how has been the response? Your book is widely talked about. It's created ripples in circuits.
Yes,
yes, yes.
It has done very well. It's doing well. It is being launched on the 9th, I think, from day after tomorrow, publicly for sale. But from what I understand from NBT, it should do very well. The inaugural function in which the Honorable Minister was there, the Honorable Union Home Minister and the Education Minister, it was a huge function. And I'm sure actually it is a honest storytelling. It's not we've not tried to cook anything, we've not tried to push in anything. It's just revealing the facts, placing them on, for public discourse.
Yes.
That is.
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor Raghuvendra Tanwar, for joining us on this special broadcast on this exceptional work on Kashmir, one of the exceptional works. Contemporary Kashmir, yes, this should be exceptional. Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you, It's been a great pleasure talking to you. Very nice being on.
It's our honor for having you on DD India.
Thank you so much.
Namaste. So, Jammu Kashmir Ladakh through the ages, this book, we spoke to the author, proves beyond a point, backed by the evidence, as described by the author himself, that India has rich heritage which is scattered across the country. And it has been there in Kashmir for thousands and thousands of years. And that Kashmir was and will always be an integral part to India. And that no article or no false perception or false narrative can alter that. Well, that's it. You can go and grab your copy of the book once it's out. Thank you very much for Professor Raghuvendra. Of course, we thanked him. And I must thank our viewers for joining us. It's time to wrap up this show on DD India. Stay tuned to us. Namaskar.